hopefully you've got your coffee and you're hydrated, ready to go for the next session. Glenn, we good? Okay, let's get started. Our next speaker is the Associate Professor of Medicine at Duke University Health System and Director of the Duke Lifestyle Medical Clinic in North Carolina. He is also the co-founder of Adapt Your Life and Chief Medical Officer and co-founder of Heal Clinics. Dr. Eric Westman has dedicated his life to helping his patients with various medical conditions such as type 1 and type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, obesity, hypertension, and many other diseases through diet and lifestyle choices. He has spent the past 19 plus years doing clinical research and providing care to his patients with an extremely high success rate. He has won numerous prestigious awards such as the Bariatrician of the Year Award and the Steelman Syme Educator Award for advancing the cause of healthcare through education and teaching, and has almost 100 peer-reviewed publications to his name. Please help me in welcoming Dr. Eric Westman.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Glenn, and thank you to Adapt Your Life for helping to put on this Adapt Keto event outside of Atlanta. We've been wanting to get here for a while. Thank you to Jess Dudley. We met several years ago. I heard, I'm in Atlanta. We'll get there one day. We'll get there one day. So, pleasure to be here finally. Great to see so many people doing the keto diet and how we talk about what it is and all. Hopefully you can stay this afternoon for the kind of uncomplicated, real food keto approach that we've been using at Duke for studying and clinical work now almost 20 years. So it's my pleasure to be here, and I'm this year going to be talking a lot about a time at which a doctor should be involved. Of course, a doctor who understands the keto approach, which is another thing you just need to understand. Not everyone understands. Not every doctor knows about it. Next slide, please. If you are new to keto, or as my brother says, that's my brother Eric. He validated the Atkins diet. Can you really put my whole career in one sentence? So I've been at Duke now since 1990. Went there as a clinical researcher in clinical trials, first in smoking cessation, nicotine addiction, and now in weight loss and keto medicine and sugar addiction. Went from nicotine addiction to sugar addiction, and starches get digested to sugar, therefore starches are just as addictive as sugar. Started 2 new companies, or helped to co-found companies to scale this up. We've taught thousands of people at Duke over the years in our area, but millions need this. So that's where the scale and ability of business to do this is required, I believe now. And then I'm the past chairman of the board, meaning past president, and a member of the Obesity Medicine Association, which is the largest group of doctors who actually help people lose weight and fix diabetes by treating the root cause of obesity. So if you think about it, the brand of medicine that I do, next slide please, keto medicine, is really a form of obesity medicine, which is a form of internal medicine, diabetes treatment, hypertension, all those things. We do all that in a reputable, scientific kind of way. So I started looking at keto in 1998, and it was 2 patients who came to me at the VA hospital in Durham who lost weight. And it was not only a curiosity, it was a rare event in 1998 for one of my internal medicine patients to to actually lose weight. So I said, you know, well, what did you do? And one of them said, I just ate steak and eggs. Well, that's interesting. You're kidding, aren't you? No, it's a diet, and it came out before you were born. I was like, now I know I'm young, and doctors today do look pretty young to me, and I was one of those young doctors, but it was getting a little personal. So I looked into it, and there were some diet books out there, and the only doctor who actually was still in practice, who I could go visit, was Dr. Atkins. And so I took after a letter exchange, and you know, why would I want to do research? Well, maybe because you could help people. He says, well, Dr. Atkins says, well, I've been helping people for 30 years. Why would I want to do research? I know what the results will be. And you know, I convinced him that, well, the rest of the world didn't really trust what he was saying. So thus the research started, and we published 46 peer-reviewed papers, now you know, a few more related to diet and the keto diet. Since 2002, I was asked to help write The New Atkins for a New You with Steve Phinney and Jeff Volek. That came out in 2010. Dr. Atkins had died in 2003. So, you know, it may seem like just yesterday, but that's 16 years ago. And what we do now and teach with Keto Clarity, Jimmy Moore wrote these books and I helped, kind of thing, like shake and bake, you know. Keto Clarity has been translated into, you know, a dozen languages around the world. It's a great book, and you know, I've learned since that book a lot of things that Jimmy has too. And Cholesterol Clarity still is a gem, because Jimmy wrote what all of the researchers were saying on his podcasts, why it's not just about the LDL cholesterol, for example. Yeah, so basically the science has been around a long time, and it's a teaching of it to doctors and even to you. And for better or for worse, it's just the reality. This is a grassroots movement because the mainstream folks they're so entrenched for various reasons. And we just can't wait to have this information out and get people more access to this. So. Next slide, please. So my practice at Duke, I started a clinical practice in 2006 after the research had really solidified this as a legitimate treatment in the obesity, medicine, diabetes world. And so now I've treated people not only with obesity and type 1 and type 2 diabetes, but also PCOS, irritable bowel syndrome, fatty liver, GERD, lymphedema, cardiovascular diseases. The preventive cardiologists who understand metabolic syndrome or that hyperinsulinemia syndrome send me their patients. Yes, cardiologists send me their patients to put them on a high-fat diet. So it's okay. Post-bariatric surgery, weight regain, weight control, and meds cause weight gain like steroids, other severe medical issues, I can help out by just changing the food. Next slide, please. So my mission is to bring keto to the world using the information that we've collected in research and in clinical care. And the two new companies I'll mention, Heal Clinics is a clinical teaching and clinical care company with clinics if needed. And then the Keto Bar and keto-friendly foods that don't have a lot of additives, that's Adapt Your Life at adaptyourlife.com. healclinics.com, adaptyourlife.com. Next slide. The Heal Care, just a brief snippet about it, is that it's the teaching that we've honed down at Duke for a long time. Has anyone heard of page 4? Can you raise it? Wow, yeah, it's the third. Well, that's because it's the 4th page of my handout at Duke. Yeah, and anyway, so it's a very simple system. We use that at Heal Care. You get coaching that's personalized. I still believe that many people benefit from one-on-one human interaction. That they'll know what you're going through, be empathetic, and help you. So the partnering and coaching you get at Heal Clinics is actually very high touch and personalized. And then medical supervision if needed, and we've learned through clinical practice and research the boundaries at which this becomes, I would say, risky. So it'd be almost like me giving you, or you going out and buying a motorcycle, and you'd never ridden a motorcycle before. Does anyone want to go out and just buy one and ride it without lessons? You know, some heads like this, some yes. So it's not that the motorcycle is harmful or dangerous. It's you just got to know how to ride it. Next slide, please. Adapt Your Life keto products. The keto bars are the most popular one, and I think we have some samples here. They truly are low carb, and this gets into the net carbs versus total carbs. You can absorb non-absorbable fiber. Yeah, and that sounds weird, doesn't it? But you can absorb non-absorbable fiber. The name isn't accurate. So there's a lot of preconceived assumptions that we test these bars and other products in people and find the result. These are useful for convenience, but we really focus on real foods. And that's my teaching about real foods. Next slide, please. Switching gears, why are we here? Why is this really needed today? Did you know that half of the U.S. is either obese or has diabetes? And there's really no improvement. It's getting worse over time, not better. Next slide. And the data are clear. If you want details of the story, this is the prevalence or how many people have obesity in the U.S., what percentage. It really had an increase when the government guidelines came out pushing carbohydrates. And the best way I can say it is that the U.S. government guidelines were designed to market the food that America made, not that they were healthy. And so by the time it was studied, we now know that these actually are not great guidelines. Of course, the guidelines have changed. You won't be able to find that shape that was the first guideline. Now it's the my plate and the this and that and the rainbow, and fortunately they're kind of unintelligible now. So the guideline ideas are fading away. But it's really kind of a tragedy that nobody talks about except people like Gary Taubes in Good Calories, Bad Calories. If you really want the scientific read, or Nina Teicholz's The Big Fat Surprise, which is a little easier read, and then she takes it up to the late, almost 2010 in there. But this is a disaster. And in the medical office, we see the consequences of obesity and diabetes. Just, it's a devastating toll. Next slide, please. The current standard of care for diabetes treatment is drugs, or pharma. And some of the most profitable drugs ever, meaning there are businesses selling these things. And I had a patient tell me this week, in tears, there shouldn't be a jingle to sell a drug for diabetes. So what you have are excellent people in marketing getting you, they used to sell or help do jingles for Fruit Loops or Tony the Tiger, and then they moved on to smoking, and now they moved on to food, if you really get upset about this, you can help out with the Nutrition Coalition, nutritioncoalition.com, that Nina Teicholz and Sarah Hallberg started to really try to change the guidelines from the top down, but you don't have to wait for that to change your own life. So drug treatment is one way, or let me say I'm in a medical conference with other doctors. This is one way to go about it, but that's not the only way. And so actually, if you want to be, politically correct, and don't say doctors are bad and evil, and then you just say, well, there's also another way to go about it. Next slide. I forgot to mention current lifestyle recommendations don't work, and again, this is just kind of a bizarre situation we're in. There was a huge study on lifestyle for obesity and heart disease. It was called the Women's Health Initiative, $500 million, and it didn't work. And that is called the low-fat diet lifestyle. So actually, if you are giving money for grants and funding from the government perspective, you tried lifestyle, it didn't work. so we're going to go to drugs. Well, wait a minute, it was the wrong lifestyle. So the superficial perception that all lifestyles are the same is another kind of reality we're in. It's not all the same. So next slide. So what is the solution, or another solution? A ketogenic lifestyle can actually put obesity and type 2 diabetes in remission and even to cure it. Remission is called no diabetes for a year, and cure is no diabetes, no evidence for 5 years, actually in the published literature. And you know how often that happens when you use medications? You never cure diabetes. So you can go down that path, you can, or maybe there's another way. Next slide. There is another way. So now it becomes an issue for obesity treatment and for diabetes. How do I get this information out in a quick form? I could just tell you, look, it's fine, it works, trust me. Well, but I'm going against everything that you've been taught and that your doctors and nutritionists have been taught. So here's some quick, easy access to the scientific evidence for ketogenic diets. The public health collaboration in the phcuk.org app on the phone or website actually has the infographic that shows if you had a competition of how many times when low carb and low fat were against each other, who won. The score is actually 31 to nothing. Low carb wins. So it's not even close. Of course, in the medical setting, it would be the diplomatic politician, chairman of the board, you know, low fat diets can work, and they can, but low carb diets work better, or work too. I mean, just to be able to say that it's an option that's on the table, that happened about 10 years ago in the research world, and even now in the clinical world, it hasn't gotten out everywhere. So the evidence is there. You can get it in an app or at a website. You can get it in some pamphlets that we created at Heal Clinics. Again, it's just trying to get the information to people in a form that they're used to. And you know what doctors are used to? What kind of information? It's very slick. It's brought to their office, often with food. And it's generally drug treatments. So that's the information that doctors are given, sadly. So we need to compete with that, or at least have you know that the evidence is sufficient or comparable. And in that first bullet there, the evidence from science and clinical practice surpasses the FDA phase 3 requirements for approval of a new drug to treat obesity. But you see there's no requirement for a diet to be FDA approved like this. But actually, the keto diet is worth 12 medications in some of my patients. If I get people off diabetes medicines, high blood pressure medicines, arthritis medicines, heartburn medicines, and they may be on 3 medicines for the blood pressure, 3 medicines for the diabetes. So it's actually pretty impressive. Next slide, please. It all boils down to a very simple situation, a very simple system, where you eat carbohydrates, the blood sugar goes up, blood glucose, insulin goes up to keep it down. And then if you don't eat carbohydrates, so in red with the carbs, and green without the carbs. This was a graphic created by Andreas Ehrenfeld at dietdoctor.com. Has anyone visited Diet Doctor? It's a great resource. He went to a conference on obesity in Europe and ate the food at the conference, and he got the blood spike in red, blood sugar spike, because they were feeding carbs at the obesity conference. And then he came to an obesity medicine conference where we are in charge of the foods and all that, and got the blood sugar rise in green because we didn't feed carbs. You go to a medical conference today for heart disease and you get pastries and all that. You go to a medical conference, the obesity medicine section, you get bacon and eggs for breakfast. So, you know, this isn't just the grassroots people, there's also an organization called the Obesity Medicine Association that understands this. It's just that it's a relatively small organization. in the medical world. Next slide. So the cycle is, hopefully you're not in this cycle anymore, where you feel compelled to eat carbohydrates. So have you noticed that carbs make you hungry? And you know, how many of you would say that that you really don't have much hunger? Raise your hands. You know. So keep your hands up. There's no evidence that low-carb diets reduce hunger. Yeah, so the first time I presented these data, someone said, well, how does this work? The hunger goes down. I said, well, where's the evidence for that? Well, you get 20 people in a room and ask them, and they all say they're not hungry. Well, that's not evidence. That doesn't count, right? So this is the cycle that most carb eaters are in, that you might even feel low blood sugars, and it's hard to explain postprandial hypoglycemia because it's the carbohydrates that rescue you out of the low blood sugar, but it's the carbohydrates that got you into the trouble in the first place. Exactly. So I see that most of you have thought that through, and so just get out of all of that mess, and things get better out of the carbs. And then the chronic inflammation, which is the kind of the next level of data that needs collection, and the diseases of inflammation, like heart disease, sort of the next frontier of research that needs to be done, because we see that in the clinic all the time. So it's not just the blood sugar elevation, it's also the chronic inflammation that carbohydrates create that is one of the beneficial effects of not eating carbs or of a ketogenic diet. Next slide, please. So what is keto? What are ketones? You know, you don't have to know any of this stuff, but many of you are here to learn these details. So ketones are basically body fuel or energy used in places instead of sugar or glucose. So we've always been running on fat in the background as well, but this is a change of the glucose utilization to ketone utilization. And so the reduction in dietary carbohydrates signals the liver to convert fat into ketones. And fat can be from the food or the body's fat. And if you're trying to lose weight, you want the fat. Wait, if you're trying to lose fat weight, then you want the fat for your ketones to come from your body, not from the food or drinks that you have. So it's a difference in the fire hose of information on keto diets. If you're trying to lose weight, you don't want to add in excessive amounts of fat or oils or butter or things like or cheese or mayonnaise. So those have limits on them if you're trying to lose fat weight off your body. In nutritional ketosis, there is no ketoacidosis, big concern among the medical field and for me years ago. Remember, for me, my concerns were about 20 years ago when those patients came to me. I knew that cholesterol would go up, and the one patient said to me in the VA hospital, well, why don't you check it? And I thought, okay. So I wasn't so overtrained. What I hear now is, well, my doctor wouldn't even check it because he knew it would be bad, right? Well, actually, in 2 in a row, these patients, their cholesterol was better, even though they were eating more fat. So anyway, and the concern about ketoacidosis for me is, there is none as long as you have insulin in your body or you're injecting insulin as a type 1. The ketones that aren't used are excreted by the kidneys, so you're not going to get extra accumulation of ketones. It's safe and desirable. In fact, the brain prefers ketones over glucose. If you put the different tissues in petri dishes and give ketones, glucose, and fatty acids, most tissues prefer the ketones over the glucose. Even the heart does. And babies are born in a state of ketosis. So how could that be bad? Okay, I guess they might be crying too, but if you flip everything upside down, actually, so ketones are really designed to be the primary fuel, not glucose. So if you eat real foods that don't have much processing and all that, and have you ever seen a pasta tree? It's a fake, it's a processed food. The language should be that glucose is the alternative fuel, not ketones. So as we see the shift in language, I still see people saying it's ketones an alternative fuel. No, I think it's a primary one with fatty acids, with fat that you eat. Next slide, please. Are all low-carb diets keto? No. Does everyone have to do a keto diet? No, but maybe if they want to live longer. So it's fascinating. 20 years ago, everyone said you would necessarily die. I mean, almost like being on the edge of a cliff if you did this kind of diet. I know that's not true. And then there were doctors who had followed people for a long time who were well-intentioned doctors, and I knew that wasn't true. But now that you can actually study keto diets, there are beneficial effects that we never really thought were possible. So I hold out that maybe we all should be eating ketone-based diets, but I don't know for sure yet. And the ketone threshold, which now, we used to just check urine, but now we have blood and breath ketones, and the problem there is that it's a different molecule that's being checked. And though they generally hang together, we've done a few studies where we've had breath, blood, and urine checked at the same time, and they generally go together. Again, I'm an MD, not a PhD, so I'm not going to quibble about the really small differences between them, but I still find any of these ketone measurements useful. If you get under 50 carbs a day, some people will be in ketosis, not everyone. The younger you are, the more active you are, the less postmenopausal you are, the more likely you'll be in ketosis at 50 grams. But if you get under 20 total grams, not net, this is total, just about everyone will be in ketosis. There's actually a big difference between 50 grams, 40 grams, 30 grams, and 20 grams. It may seem like, like really low to you, all of it, but actually there's a difference between those different levels. I was just at a conference, the Metabolic Health Summit is an annual conference where research is being presented about nutritional ketosis, and asked Mark Sisson and Rob Wolf who do the paleo kind of teaching, and Rob talks about evolutionary perspective and all that, and I said, well, if I've helped someone lose 200 pounds by having them not eat carbs, do I have to have them eat carbs again? Everything looks fine, everything's better, and their position was, yes, most people should, and I said, well, where's the science behind that? And then, well, evolutionary, looking back and all that, and then I'm like, well, couldn't we do better in the future maybe than just looking back? If Orville, in North Carolina, we have the Wright brothers, as first in flight, unless you're from Ohio. I wouldn't say that. But if the Wright brothers had done a study looking at all of the studies done and whether humans should fly, and evolutionarily should humans fly, they would have concluded no. End of story, go home. They went to the North Carolina coast and watched the birds fly and figured out that the wing had to have a little ability to move. Anyway, long story. I think we can actually do better than looking back at what people have done, although looking back is a great start, which means no Fruit Loops, no Captain Crunch, no Coca-Cola, things like that. Next slide, please. So going keto is simple, and I'll go through a simple system that we've developed and borrowed, that were heavily influenced by the doctors who used this in the 1900s, Dr. Atkins, Dr. Eads, Dr. Bernstein, Dr. Rosedale, and I'll go over this afternoon. Next slide. You do have to relearn what you've been taught. You don't have to look at calories. It's mostly irrelevant, because how the calories act inside the body is different than how the calories are measured outside the body. You don't have to look at or be concerned about total and saturated fats, because we know now those are great sources of energy. And then the main thing to look at is the carbohydrates. For total carbohydrate counting, you don't even have to subtract anything. You just look at the number that comes after the words total carbohydrate or total carb on the bottle if they truncate the word. Someone came back to me and said, I couldn't find total carbohydrate on the bottle. I said, well, it says total carb. Oh, that means carbohydrate. Yeah, well, I mean, it was reasonable. I mean, now, I don't understand cars very well. You know, if the mechanic really wants to tell me all about how the car, you know, this was broken and the gasket and the turbo, this and that, like, look, just fix it, okay? So I understand that if you don't understand the big picture view and you're kind of stressed out about it, those little things can trip you up. So just look at, oh yeah, it does say total carbs on this one too. And that's total carbohydrates. Next. Oh, well that gets me to the person who came back just all happy that she was doing the diet. But I saw on there, you know, bread, pasta, rice, and she said, I'm doing the no carb diet. I said, really? Yeah, no carbonation. Well, now in my clinic, and I do an hour-long class, and I do bore people. Some people sleep. And, but the point being that you give teaching, and a lot of information is given, and that's why most coaches, most programs that are successful have follow-up to make sure that you're doing it right, and that those kinds of simple things are fixed really quickly. Next slide, please. So do calories matter? Yes, they do. However, you don't have to count them because for just about everyone, a keto diet is you consume less calories than before. In fact, what we say is that it normalizes what your body really needs because you take away the extraneous carbohydrate cravings and carbs. Does anyone think carbs make you hungry? No. Yeah, there's no evidence for that. You know, no peer-reviewed publication with that in the title. It's almost come to that if I can't reference something that has it in the title. Of course, I was taught that you don't put the answer to your paper in the title. So you know, it would be the relationship of eating carbohydrates and hunger would be the title of the paper. And now everyone writes, you know, what the results are. Anyway, next slide, please. There's no restriction on eating eggs, meats, fats, including saturated fats. Someone says, yes, healthy fats. No, that means it's just a natural fat. Even saturated fats? Yes. Saturated fats make your good cholesterol go up. That's even the response of, well, but if I eat more saturated fat, my cholesterol will go up. Yes, the good one. Oh wait, that was supposed to be funny. Well, now in the research on that's only been out, you know, let's say 8 years. That's Jeff Volek. Again, he had to do a paper that in the title says eating more eggs raises your HDL. Because it's like, you know, people don't like to read other people's papers anymore. And yes, those things down the left, lower left, I'd never had one growing up in Wisconsin. They're comfort food for many of the Durham natives where I live, those pork rinds or meat skins, or in fact a lot of soul food that is fine as long as you keep the carbs really low. And those are eggs in the middle and butter there. Next slide, please. It's healthy, filling. Low carb doesn't mean no carb. So you can always say, you know, well, that's that no carb diet. No, you get carbs in the vegetables. No one ever really wants to hear the other, well, but it's not many vegetables. You know, but you are getting carbs, actually. And there are forbidden carbs. And, you know, there's more in common between all of the popular diets today than there are differences between these diets. None of the popular diets that are sound would have you drink sugar sweetened beverages, right? Or have you have packaged Cheetos, Doritos, things like that. So actually there's it's called a false choice, where some diet proponents will say, if you don't eat our way, then it's bad. You know, it's our way or no. I think there are lots of ways to go about it. And if there's one public health measure in North Carolina, maybe even in Georgia, that would be helpful, is to get rid of sweet tea. I mean, tea. Because it's all sweet tea. Yeah. You don't want to drink sugar. Yeah. Next slide. So, rule number one, if you're teaching this in general, not everyone wants to go keto, then first, just eliminate the sugar. But not everyone knows that juice has a lot of of sugar in it, that some ketchups have a lot of sugar. A lot of people don't know that fruit has sugar in it. It's fascinating to, well, wait, how many of you receive nutritional training? I mean, very few, right? I mean, even doctors, and so it makes sense that we don't really understand this. So teaching this is really important, understanding. So some doctors teach based on teaspoons of sugar in the different foods. It's one way to do it. The teaching that I do will be based on the grams of carbohydrates, so you don't have to make a conversion to teaspoons. Next slide. Of course, grains, pastas, starches get digested to sugar. The battery acid in your stomach will digest these things into sugar. Just check your blood sugar an hour after eating any food to see how it affects you. I wonder, is anyone using a CGM, continuous glucose monitor yet? Yeah, I don't really recommend them if you don't have diabetes, although a lot of patients want to know. I think it's a little too out there. You don't have to know that detail, but a lot of people want to know. But for diabetes, it's been a game changer. You can know your blood sugar level all day long. And so someone came to me recently, I didn't know that my blood sugar was going up after the meal until I had that continuous glucose monitor on. Well, but you have diabetes and you know that bread raises your blood well, but it really didn't hit me until I saw it on my own. I point here because you can put it on your shoulder. And so if you really don't know and if you're the kind of person that needs to see it in yourself, then you might consider something like a continuous glucose monitor. Because these foods will raise your blood sugar just as fast as drinking Coca-Cola or Pepsi or sugar-sweetened beverage. Next slide, please. Fruits and nuts are nature's candy is a way to say you want to limit them every now and then, that sort of thing. And nuts are what's known as a trigger food for most people. How many of you have had the occasion where you'll have a tub of nuts and before you know it, they're gone, right? So, yeah, for a lot of people it's a trigger food, so we'd stay away from there at first. Next slide. What about food quality? Well, this is, it was explained to me that what we're seeing today is a merging of the paleo food quality with the ketogenic diet for epilepsy, with the ad-lib low-carb diet for diabetes and obesity treatment, all put in the same sort of teaching fire hose from the internet. And it's not easy to separate all of that. But the food quality idea, it's great if you can. It's bringing in the idea of sustainability and maybe you can have less omega-6 fatty acids in your diet. I'm still not convinced that everyone needs to do this. And in my world, if you eat the best food at the highest quality that you can, that you can afford and have access to, it's probably going to work just fine. Now, you know, if you were on a bully pulpit and said, well, we want to save the earth and you know, make sure you get local eating and all that, great. I mean, that's another issue. But for an individual's health, it's okay if you occasionally, or in some of my patients all the time, eat at a fast food place. Just stay away from the carbs. So this has been a big distraction for a lot of people, and even in the news this week, an observational study, meaning it's not a causal study, suggests a link between the artificially sweetened beverages and stroke and heart disease. I'm not convinced. I mean, these are not strong studies. Next slide, please. And I'll get into more details of how to do this in the class. I hope you can stay for that. We don't talk about exercise at first. Most people who come to me with a body mass index of 38 have no energy to exercise, or may even feel like, I'm not even going to try to lose weight because I know I have to exercise. Nope, you can lose weight just by changing the food. And then it's funny, nobody wants to just watch me on YouTube talking about a patient anymore. They want to see the patient. So I'm starting to do videos, and one of the first ones I did was with Tanya, who's in a wheelchair, because I mean, she's paralyzed, she can't exercise. And so she said, anyway, you don't have to exercise to lose weight. Now, being active is great for other reasons, but don't worry about that at first. Next slide, please. And then you don't have to track things if you're not hungry. Next slide, although you can. Do I have to eat keto forever? No, but you can. Next slide. We've known about this for a long time. In fact, this is a book from 100 years ago. The treatment of diabetes was a 10-gram per day carbohydrate diet. And I'll give you 20. Next slide. And I'm just going to fast forward, running out of time here. And next slide. Next slide. It's not just obesity and diabetes, and these other studies are being done now, which is fantastic, on even just people feel better as a way of staying on this approach. Next slide. This is a condition that was thought to be untreatable, lymphedema. Actually, it can get better with a keto diet. Next slide. And the new data, new science, looking at Alzheimer's and cancer is really, really interesting and exciting because there aren't many other options there. Next slide. You may have to have some reprogramming. This is a wand from Men in Black, where it erases the memory of any nutritional knowledge that you've been given before. Next slide. Today, the most common missteps are using net carbs instead of total carbs. Don't think, if net carbs works for you, great. But don't think that, well, then keto didn't work. Go from net carbs to total carbs. What seems like a small change there can actually be a big change. Letting an app or a program tell you how much protein to eat. And someone came into me and said, well, I know I'm not eating enough protein. So how do you know? Well, because my app tells me I need more protein. Well, wait a second. What did your body tell you, right? So learn to listen to your own body signals. And then eating or drinking too much fat is a common misstep that I see today. Next slide. How do you get started? If you have a medical problem, see someone who knows about this. I'm quite concerned that people will not understand the power of changing the food, and the medications can become too strong. I have to reduce insulin on the first day someone starts this diet, or a low blood sugar will happen. The first day you have to change medications. So if you're doing it on your own, this last week I had 2 people who brought themselves off 100, 150 units of insulin because the waiting list was so long, the time to wait to come in to see me. They started, and they could get on a motorcycle, and they figured out how to ride it without any problem, but not everyone is able. That's the metaphor for not everyone knows how to reduce their insulin, and when there's a low blood sugar, you don't just keep taking that insulin, you lower it. In fact, this one person read one of the books we wrote and saw an example of it and just said, okay, I'll do it. So it's like reading a manual on how to ride a motorcycle and then hopping on one. You know, some people can do that, but not everyone can. And then next slide, please. The only company where you can actually invest and change the world toward a keto medicine future is actually keto clinics. And we started a campaign to really jumpstart and relaunch the company last November. And we started with $37,000. There were 39 investors. This is what's called an online public offering, where you can, with as little as $480, actually own stock in a company. And this is one of my companies. And the idea is to teach people at a distance with the method that I'll tell you later today, and then provide the clinical care if someone's on medication so that they can safely come off the medication. So healclinics.com/offering. I even put my investment on my credit card. It's that simple. But that was supposed to be fun. So you're shocked. But no, this is actually, it's not giving away money in a Kickstarter. This is actually owning stock in the company. There's no other place you can do that. So, next slide. This is the most recent. We're at $620,000. Now those of you in big business who say, oh, you know, it's a good start, yeah, we want 1 million to make sure we're on a solid footing. And Georgia is on the radar screen. We have clinics open in North Carolina and Virginia. We actually have real data, real people with clinics opening. And I hope if you want to get involved in another special way, most investors say, I didn't want anyone else to have to wait so long or try to have to find their own, you know, it took me a year to find this. This provides it, you know, right now. So thank you. Next slide. Appreciate it. And thanks to